A Cleveland Browns reporter, Daniel Usay, had his take on the quarterback competition between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. And also, we got a former player who played for the Cleveland Browns, letting you know the best thing for the Cleveland Browns is to start Shedeur Sanders. And also during this show, we're going to talk about Jimmy Horn Jr. He's getting ready for his second.
Nobody thought it would come to this. A former first-round talent sitting in a quarterback room, still fighting just to be heard. This is the story of a kid who was supposed to be picked in the top 5. Instead, he watched name after name get called before his. And now, months later, he's still doing the same thing he did in that draft room, proving people wrong. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this narrative. It found him the moment he was born into it. Everybody knows the last name. Everybody knows the father. Deion Sanders isn't just a Hall of Famer, he's a myth in shoulder pads, a walking highlight reel who turned swagger into a business model. So when his son stepped onto a college field, the cameras were already rolling before he threw a single pass. That's the deal you make when your dad is prime time. You don't get a quiet rise, you get a spotlight the size of a stadium, whether you're ready for it or not. And Shedeur was ready. At least that's what the tape said. Truth, Jackson State, Colorado. 3 stops, 1 consistent story. A quarterback who could sling it, who could extend plays, who made throws that had scouts pulling up the film twice just to make sure what they saw was real. People around the league started saying his name in the same breath as the top passers in the country. Some had him going 2nd overall, some had him going 1st. The hype wasn't manufactured, it was earned, throw by throw, season by season. Then came draft night, and the room got quiet. Pick after pick, team after team, his name wasn't called. Not in the top 5, not in the top 10, not even close. Cameras caught the tension on his face, the kind of tension you can't coach away, the kind that comes from watching a dream slip further and further from your hand in real time. By the time his name was finally announced, it wasn't in the 1st round, it wasn't in the 2nd. It was the 5th. The 5th round. Think about that for a second. A quarterback some scouts had penciled in as a top 2 talent, falling all the way to a place where teams are usually gambling on developmental projects, not franchise arms. Something didn't add up, and a lot of people around the football world said exactly that, out loud, on television, on podcasts, in barbershops, from Cleveland to Compton. That fall did something, though. It didn't just hurt him, it built him. Because now every single throw he makes carries a different weight. It's not just about winning a job anymore. It's about answering a question the entire league asked out loud when they let him drop that far. So he landed in Cleveland. And Cleveland, if you know anything about football, does not hand out easy welcomes.
ESPN NFL Nation Browns reporter Daniel Oyefusi with us now. And Daniel, you have a story right now on ESPN.com outlining the Browns quarterback competition. Got 4 names mentioned in that story. What should we expect once camp opens on Tuesday?
Yeah, Phil, the Browns quarterback competition that's going to extend into training camp this week is firmly going to center around Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. The 2 quarterbacks split first-team reps throughout the spring, and head coach Todd Monken.
The Browns didn't bring him in to sit quietly on a clipboard. They brought him in to compete, real competition, against a name that still carries enormous weight around that building, Deshaun Watson, a quarterback who once commanded one of the richest contracts in NFL history, a quarterback trying to come back from a serious injury, trying to prove his body can still do what it used to do at 30 years old. 2 very different stories, 2 very different paths, colliding in the same quarterback room, fighting for the same job. This is where the story gets tense, because it's not just player versus player, it's youth versus experience, it's upside versus track record, it's a fan base split right down the middle, and you can feel it every time those 2 names get mentioned together on sports talk shows across the country. Reporters who cover that locker room every single day have said the same thing, in their own words. This competition is real, it's close, and it's going to run all the way into training camp. The coaching staff has been candid that they see legitimate starting caliber traits in both men. That's not the kind of thing coaches usually admit about 2 quarterbacks at once. It tells you just how tight this actually is. And here's where the criticism starts creeping in, because every young quarterback has one thing scouts and coaches obsess over: speed. Not foot speed, decision speed.
How fast can you read the field, process what the defense is showing you, and get the ball out of your hand before a 300-pound man turns you into a highlight for the wrong team? Last season, that was the number people kept bringing up. Shedeur's average time to release the football was the slowest of any quarterback in the league who started at least 6 games. Not close to the slowest, the actual slowest. That stat spread everywhere. Analysts pointed to it as proof he wasn't ready. Critics used it as ammunition. Even people rooting for him had to admit that number was a real problem. But here's the thing about pressure. Some players fold under it. Some players use it as fuel. Former players who've actually put on a Browns uniform have come out publicly backing him. Longtime defenders of that franchise's history have said flatly they believe he should be the guy under center, that his ceiling is simply higher than what Watson can offer at this stage of his career. That kind of public support from a franchise legend doesn't happen for just anybody. It happens when people see something real developing in front of them. And then there's the mindset piece, because talent alone has never been the full story with Shedeur. People who studied his approach point to one specific thing they want to see evolve: his willingness to live inside the structure of the offense instead of relying purely on his natural playmaking instincts. It's a fine line every gifted young quarterback has to walk. Trust the system enough to get through it quickly and efficiently, but stay dangerous enough to make the improvisational plays that made him special in the first place. Coaches have openly praised his growth this offseason, saying he's picked up the offensive concepts quickly and shown real improvement getting through his progressions. That's the encouraging part.
Daniel was on ESPN. He revealed Shedeur Sanders' biggest challenge, saying that the quarterback must balance playing within Todd Monken's offense while still using his playmaking ability when facing live pass rush situations. The coaching staff have already said Shedeur Sanders' growth during the offseason workout program was great. Shedeur Sanders has grasp of the Monken offense and the ability to get through his progression more.
The hard part is this: none of that fully translates until live bullets are flying. OTAs and non-contact practices are one thing. A real pass rush, closing in at full speed, with real consequences for hesitation, that's a different animal entirely. That's the next test. That's the one nobody can simulate. So, what does the film actually show? There was a moment during a joint practice that turned heads, a comeback route to Denzel Boston, somewhere in that 10 to 15-yard window that quarterbacks live and die by in this league. The ball came out fast, clean footwork, anticipation timing, not reaction timing. The kind of throw that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a quarterback trusted his read and let it fly before the window even fully opened. People who watched it live said the same thing. That's the version of Shedeur Sanders they want to see every single week. Consistent in the intermediate game, quick with his eyes, quick with his feet. Because if he can string that kind of accuracy together over an entire training camp, it doesn't just help his case to win the job. It silences the exact criticism that's been following him since before he ever put on a Browns uniform. And that's really what this entire training camp comes down to. Speed of decision, one throw at a time, chipping away at the doubt. If you're just now finding this channel, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to be tracking every single step of this quarterback battle, all the way to week 1. You don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture, because Shedeur isn't the only young player carrying pressure into this season. Down in Carolina, there's a receiver named Jimmy Horn Jr. heading into his second NFL year, and the early buzz coming out of camp has people paying attention. He's undersized compared to a lot of the names in that Panthers receiver room, but what he lacks in size, he makes up for something that can't be taught easily: pure burst. Quick out of his breaks, sudden in and out of his cuts. The kind of player defensive backs describe as slippery, because the moment they think they have him locked up, he's already gone. In a receiver room that's genuinely stacked with talent, standing out isn't easy, but the early word from camp is that Horn is doing exactly that, carving out a role for himself heading into what a lot of people believe could be a real breakout season. And then there's a name that a lot of casual fans might not even know yet, but they will soon: Kaidon Salter. If that name feels familiar, it should, because he was the starting quarterback at Colorado the season before Shedeur ever wore that uniform. Now he's chasing his own football dream, a different path, in the Canadian Football League, about to make his first career start as a professional quarterback.
It's all about speed. Speed of the game. Improving that. And Shedeur Sanders had displayed that. And one pass, I know he displayed that. That ball that he threw to Denzel Boston during practice with the Rickies 2 days ago, it showed me that Shedeur Sanders' footwork is right and he's working on his speed. That ball came out of his hands so fast. He knew what he was going with.
There's a real story there too. A young player who came up through a major college program, didn't land the NFL opportunity he wanted right away, and instead of walking away from the game, he took it north, looking to prove himself on a different stage. Reports suggest the starting job opened up because of an injury ahead of him on the depth chart, which means the opportunity landed in his lap almost overnight. Now it's on him. Every scout in the NFL who passed on him the first time will be watching that tape. That's the part people forget about football at this level. It's not just one story, it's dozens of them, running in parallel, all carrying the same theme. Talented young players, written off too early, still fighting for a chance to prove the doubters wrong. Back to Cleveland, though, because that's where the real tension sits heading into the regular season. Training camp is going to be the proving ground. Every single practice matters. Every rep in front of those coaches gets charted, evaluated, compared. Deshaun Watson brings the resume, the arm talent that once earned him a $250 million contract, and the experience of having played meaningful football at the highest level. But he also brings the uncertainty of a serious injury, the questions about whether his body can hold up over a full 16-game season, and the pressure of a fan base that's grown restless waiting for a return on that investment. Shedeur brings something different: youth, upside, a chip on his shoulder the size of 5 rounds worth of draft slides, and increasingly, according to people inside that building, real growth on a week-to-week basis. The coaching staff has made it clear they're not rushing this decision. They want to see it play out fully, all the way into padded practices, all the way into preseason games, when the speed of the game finally matches what these two quarterbacks will actually face once the regular season begins. And that's exactly why this story is so gripping right now. Nobody actually knows how it ends. Not the fans, not the media, maybe not even the coaching staff themselves. Not yet. What we do know is this: a kid who was told by 31 teams that he wasn't good enough to be picked early is sitting in a real competition for a starting job in the National Football League. A kid whose last name comes with impossible expectations is out there every single day trying to build his own story, separate from his father's shadow, one accurate throw at a time. Maybe he wins the job in week 1. Maybe it takes longer than that. Maybe the story shifts again before the season even kicks off. But one thing feels certain, watching this all unfold: Shedeur Sanders isn't running from the pressure. He's using it. And if that comeback throw to Denzel Boston is any indication of where his game is heading, the rest of the NFL better start paying very close attention, because the version of Shedeur Sanders that shows up this season might be nothing like the one that fell on draft night. This is a story still being written, and it's far from over.
Jimmy Horn Jr. is going into his second year as a wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. Well, they had their pads on, and boy, the way Jimmy Horn Jr. is moving is impressive. Quickness, speed, fast, agility. He got it all. He got the juice. He got it all, man. He can come out of them cuts. He can come out of them breaks. Man, he leaving these guys in the dust. He leaving these guys out of their shoes.
Let's rewind for a second, though, because to really understand why this moment matters so much, you have to understand what it felt like to be inside that draft green room. Cameras don't lie, and on that night, the cameras caught something raw. A young man who had spent his entire life being told he was special, watching name after name scroll across the bottom of the screen, none of them his. Every team that passed had a reason. Character concerns, some said. Contract demands, others whispered. Fit issues, a few analysts floated. But strip away all the noise, and what you're left with is a simple, brutal fact. 31 teams looked at a quarterback many considered a top-tier talent and decided somebody else was the safer bet. That's not just a football story. That's a human one. Because pride takes a hit in moments like that. Confidence takes a hit. And how a young athlete responds to that kind of public failure says more about him than any highlight reel ever could. Some players shrink after a fall like that. They start second-guessing every throw. They start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. But the people around Shedeur, the ones who've been in the building with him day after day, keep saying the opposite is happening. They talk about a player who shows up early, stays late, studies extra tape, and treats every single practice rep like it's the fourth quarter of a playoff game. That's the mindset piece people keep circling back to. Talent got him this far, but it's going to take something more than talent to finish this job. Now zoom back out to the bigger picture, because the criticism hasn't stopped just because camp opened. Analysts across national television have debated this quarterback competition non-stop. Some believe Watson's experience and arm talent still make him the safer Week 1 starter, especially with a franchise that's invested so heavily in him already. Others believe the Browns owe it to their future to find out exactly what they have in Shedeur right now, while the pressure is still building and not fully boiled over. And then there's the fan perspective, which honestly might be the loudest voice in this entire conversation. Walk through comment sections, sports talk radio callers, message boards, and you'll find a fan base split almost perfectly down the middle. Half of them see Shedeur as the emotional torchbearer of a new era, the guy who can finally give Cleveland football fans something to believe in again after years of quarterback disappointment. The other half point to that release time statistic, point to the inconsistency, and say patience is running out, that talent means nothing if you can't get the ball out before the pocket collapses. Both sides have a point. That's what makes this so compelling to watch play out in real time. But here's something worth remembering. Every legendary quarterback story has a chapter just like this one, a moment of public doubt, a stretch where the outside world wasn't sure the talent was actually going to translate. The names change, the eras change, but that pattern of doubt before breakthrough shows up again and again throughout football history. It doesn't guarantee Shedeur becomes anything close to a legend, but it does mean this kind of adversity isn't necessarily the end of a story. Sometimes it's the beginning of the real one. So, what happens next? Training camp keeps rolling. Padded practices start ramping up the physicality. Preseason games are coming, which means live bullets, real hits, real pressure, real consequences for a slow read or a late decision. That's where this competition truly gets decided, not in shorts and helmets during OTAs, but in full pads when the speed of the game finally matches what Sunday afternoons actually demand. If Shedeur can keep stacking throws like that comeback to Denzel Boston, if he can keep shaving fractions of a second off his release time, if he can keep proving he trusts the system while still flashing that natural playmaking ability that made him a household name back at Colorado, then this story bends in his favor, quickly. But if the pressure catches up to him, if the hesitation creeps back in against a live pass rush that doesn't care about potential or bloodlines or pedigree, then the questions that followed him out of that draft green room don't just linger, they get louder. That's the tension sitting over Cleveland right now. Every single practice matters. Every single rep gets dissected. And somewhere in the middle of it all is a 20-something quarterback trying to write his own chapter, separate from his father's legacy, separate from the doubt of 31 teams, separate from a statistic that labeled him the slowest in the league a year ago. Whatever happens, one thing is already true. Shedeur Sanders is no longer just a name attached to a famous father. He's a story all on his own now, unfolding in real time, in front of an entire country that can't stop watching. And if history has taught us anything about players who get counted out too early, it's this. The ones with something to prove are usually the most dangerous ones on the field. Keep watching, because this quarterback battle in Cleveland is only just getting started, and the next few weeks could end up defining the rest of Shedeur Sanders' career.